So some people just burn through film. Film cost is no object, and it's obvious. Let me get this. Generally, it's people who are well-to-do who just bought a bunch of film and they're just like sitting there just. And so, I don't know if that was a glass-bottom boat or if they were just looking over the side. I missed that part, but that was more of the Simon home movies, Simon family, that we've been showing things from. It started off with entirely too much footage of ice skating, and this seems to be a lot of footage of a pond or lake or something where somebody's just letting that camera run, burning through that film. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films, and those were home movies. But we also have other films, and this one is more of our oeuvre, our genre, our wheelhouse. This is about how to build better paragraphs from our old friends at Cornet Films. Enjoy.
This is the story of how our class began to understand how to build paragraphs. It began one morning while we were getting ready for school. I was getting the blackboard ready, when all of a sudden, it was Susan. She'd brought something to class. And do you know that was how we really began to learn how to write good paragraphs? This is what happened. What is that, Susan?
It's the prize my dog Major won.
At the dog show?
Yes, yesterday.
Oh, that's wonderful, Susan. What did he do to win it?
Oh, lots of things. The thing he did best was called jumping the hurdles. I had to throw a wooden dumbbell over the hurdle. And then Major had to get it and bring it back to me. He did that and everything else so well that he won first prize.
That's just wonderful, Susan.
Mrs. Clark, why doesn't Susan write about her prize for the school paper?
What do you think, Susan?
Well,
would you rather have someone else write the story?
oh, yes.
All right, then. Who would like to write the story? Let's see, Janet, Bill, and Charlie. All right, now, class, let's get all our pencils and papers. We'll have some writing exercise. Well, that's the way it began. Janet and Bill and Charlie asked Susan all about her dog, Major, and about the dog show, and about the prize. And soon the story was written. But something was wrong with it. What was it?
But it just doesn't sound right to me now. It seems all jumbled up. It sure is. Mrs. Clark,
Yes, Janet. What is it?
the story is all mixed up, but we don't know what to do.
Let's see. Let me read you just one of the paragraphs you've written, and you try to imagine what each sentence tells. Major jumped over the hurdle. Major is a big dog, almost as big as Susan. Last year in a show, Major walked around the hurdle instead of jumping. Susan has been training him all year in her backyard. The judge gave Susan the prize Major had won. He brought the dumbbell back to Susan and sat down in front of her at the show this year. She was very disappointed last year when he didn't win. Well, could you tell what was wrong? many main ideas should there be in a paragraph?
Well, one main idea. That's right. A paragraph should have just one main idea. Let's look at the paragraph again. All righty. Well, look. We say how Major jumped, how big he is, about last year, and how Susan trained him. The paragraph's about too many things. What do we really want to tell about in this paragraph? About how well Major jumped over the hurdle. And that should be in the topic sentence.
And that is when we began to understand how to build good paragraphs. When they started to write the story, they gathered lots of information. It was just like having a lot of snapshots about the dog show. But all the snapshots are mixed up. One doesn't lead to the next. So it's hard to understand what happened. That's the way we begin working on most stories. But now they want to write a paragraph about this main idea, how Major jumped the hurdle. They pick out all information which tells about Major jumping the hurdle, and just that information. When they are sure they have all the information picked out that relates to the main idea, they are ready to arrange all of it into a paragraph. First, the main idea is put into the topic sentence. Then under it comes how Susan gave Major the command. Then, how Major jumped the hurdle. How he picked up the dumbbell and jumped back with it in his mouth. How he came to sit in front of her so she could take the dumbbell. And finally, how he sat beside her when it was over. You see, we arranged the information under the main idea, so we have a clear idea of what happened. That's what Janet, Bill, and Charlie have been doing, selecting and arranging the information for their paragraph. If they have done a good job, we should understand what the paragraph tells about. Let's find out.
All right. I'll read it to you. Listen. One of the tests Major had to pass was jumping the hurdle. When Major's turn to perform came, Susan threw a wooden dumbbell over the hurdle. Then, at a signal from Susan, Major ran and jumped over the hurdle. On the other side, he picked up the dumbbell and jumped back over again. He sat down directly in front of Susan. Then Susan took the dumbbell and Major turned to sit at her side. Well, that's it. It's good, only it doesn't seem finished. We need a good sentence to end it, that's all. One like our first sentence, about the main idea. What about Major had jumped the hurdle very well? But we know that already. Major had jumped the hurdle even better than Susan had hoped he would.
After we've written a paragraph, we go over it and ask, is it a good paragraph? Does it tell about only one main idea? Remember how confusing the paragraph was when it discussed several main ideas? The second question is, does the topic sentence tell the main idea interestingly? Check your topic sentences. Get your paragraphs off to a good start. Third, have you selected and arranged the information in order? Remember, in building a good paragraph, we select and arrange information under main ideas. The last question is, does the concluding sentence finish the paragraph? Does it really complete the main idea? We have found these questions helpful in building good paragraphs. But Janet, Bill, and Charlie were the ones who really began to help us learn how to build better paragraphs. They not only had written one good paragraph for their story, they also made a list of the main ideas for each paragraph in their story. This was such a good plan, and each of them was going to choose one main idea to write a paragraph about. Why don't you? Would you like to write a paragraph describing Major? Remember what he looks like? What other information will you want to include in a description of Major? You may want to write a paragraph telling what happened at last year's show. Perhaps you will want to write a paragraph telling how you think Susan trained Major before he won the prize at the dog show. This paragraph is the one they wrote. Or you may want to choose this idea, the prize Major won. But whatever you choose, after you've written your paragraph, check it. Remember to use these questions to build better paragraphs.
Thank you, Coronet, for that. When you start watching a lot of these or scanning a lot of these, you see a lot of common actors, kids that show up, and the little one kid who's a little chubbier than the rest. Certainly not chubby by today's standards, but he shows up a lot. It's great. I was like, oh, there is that kid again. It's almost like, wow. I'd love to see what the trajectory of that person is, but unfortunately, we're not credited. We don't get information on who these people were. So it's pretty great. Help me out here. That was Mr. Be Natural, wasn't it? The voice of the narrator? No, I don't think so. It would be convenient if it was, but I don't think it is. Yeah, the Mr. Be Natural, I think I've been trying to find that when Mystery Science Theater and Riff Tracks, they were trying to redo a bunch of stuff. They were trying to find a better copy of that, something that was better than the SD transfer that was done, and they asked me if I had it. And I don't have it, and we tried to hunt it down, and we have not been able to find the film print. So, the quality that exists is what it is at the moment. So behind me, I have a film scanner, and we have a film set up on there that's not made by Coronet. I don't think. Maybe it is. The title is kind of clipped on this, so we'll see. This is a 4-cycle engine. Enjoy.
as well as how to repair it. The carburetor, spark plug, cylinder, and piston perform basically the same jobs on a 4-cycle engine as they do on a 2-cycle engine. However, 2 additional parts have been added to the 4-cycle engine. The intake valve, which opens and closes the intake port at the proper time. and the exhaust valve, which opens and closes the exhaust port. As you increase your knowledge about engines, you'll need to learn some basic things. Top dead center, or TDC, is the piston's highest point of upward travel in the cylinder. Bottom dead center, or BDC, is the piston's lowest point of downward travel in the cylinder. The stroke is the distance traveled by the piston in its movement from top dead center to bottom dead center and is measured in inches. The piston makes a stroke while traveling down and another stroke while traveling up. One downstroke plus one upstroke of the piston equals one revolution of the crankshaft. The bore is the inside diameter of the cylinder, usually measured in inches. Throw is the distance in inches from the center of the crank pin to the center of the crankshaft main bearing. Clearance volume, or CV, is the volume of the combustion chamber above the piston when the piston is at top dead center. This volume is measured in cubic inches. Piston displacement, or PD, refers to the volume that the piston displaces as it travels from top dead center to bottom dead center and is expressed in cubic inches. Total volume, or TV, is the cylinder volume above the piston when the piston is at bottom dead center and is equal to clearance volume plus piston displacement. Compression ratio, CR, is the ratio of the total volume to the clearance volume. As you can see in this illustration, the compression ratio is 3:1. For an engine to produce power, 4 operations are required and are known as the basic principles. Each operation requires one stroke of the piston. The 4 strokes are the intake stroke. This provides the fuel for combustion. The compression stroke prepares for combustion. The power stroke, where the fuel is ignited and burned to produce power, and the exhaust stroke, which removes the burned and waste gases. The 4-stroke cycle principle requires 4 strokes to complete one cycle. At the end of stroke number 1, the crankshaft is made 1/2 revolution. Stroke number 2 completes a full revolution. Stroke number 3 gives us 1 1/2 revolutions. Stroke number 4, the crankshaft has made 2 complete revolutions. Let's go through each stroke step by step. On the first stroke, or as it's called, the intake stroke, the piston moves down in the cylinder. This creates a partial vacuum in the cylinder. The intake valve is open. Atmospheric pressure forces air through the carburetor, where gasoline is mixed with the air, and the air-fuel mixture enters the cylinder through the open intake valve. At the end of the intake stroke, the crankshaft has made 1/2 of a revolution. On the second stroke, that's the compressors, the piston moves up in the cylinder and the air-fuel mixture is compressed. At the end of the compression stroke, the crankshaft has made 1 full revolution. A hot spark ignites the fuel. On the third stroke, the power stroke, the compressed fuel mixture is ignited. As the fuel burns, it heats and expands rapidly. The rapid expansion of the gas in the cylinder forces the piston down. both valves remain closed during this stroke. At the end of the power stroke, the crankshaft has made 1 1/2 revolutions. On the fourth stroke, that's the exhaust stroke, the exhaust valve opens. The piston moves up in the cylinder, and the burned gases are forced out of the cylinder. At the end of the exhaust, the crankshaft has made 2 revolutions and is ready to repeat of operation. Let's review a cycle in slow motion. First, the piston is drawn down by the crankshaft. As it starts down, the intake valve is open. A gasoline and air mixture enters the cylinder. When the piston reaches the bottom of the stroke, the intake valve closes and the crank piston back up in the cylinder. This compresses the fuel mixture in the combustion chamber. As the piston nears the top of the compression stroke, the fuel mixture is ignited. The mixture burns and the expanding gas drives the piston down in the cylinder. Both valves are closed during the power stroke. When the piston reaches the bottom of the power stroke, the exhaust valve opens and the spinning crankshaft forces the piston, pushing the burned gases out of the cylinder. This is the basic operation of the 4-stroke cycle engine. Of a single set of cylinders will contain the same basic parts.
Well, I have no idea what that's about. I don't know who made it. I don't know who... Because the title is clipped and the ending is clipped. So it's hard to figure out. Maybe it's Briggs Stratton because that seems to be prominently featured. But yeah, that's kind of the deal. Let's watch this next film that was made by Indiana University, who has a vast number of 16mm films, more than we do. This is Bacteria Laboratory Study. Enjoy.
In his quest for exploration, and worlds open before him. Through the use of telescope, he has made startling discoveries of great worlds beyond his own. In a similar way, he has used the microscope to discover the minute worlds that exist around him. Of these, the world of microscopic living things has influenced the welfare of mankind significantly. Low magnification with the microscope reveals protozoa, one-celled microorganisms, animal life in its most primitive form. And algae, microscopic green plants, capable of food production by photosynthesis. Higher magnification is required to study yeast, single-celled plants which while magnification approaching 1,000 times is used to study of this microscopic world. Yet an electron microscope, capable of magnifying many thousands of times, reveals living things even smaller than bacteria. These are viruses, the smallest known forms of life. Although the microscope is useful in the study of bacteria, to learn more about these microorganisms, it is necessary to grow them in the laboratory. This permits study of characteristics, important in understanding the activities of bacteria in nature and in disease. Bacteria are grown on food materials containing the same elements as those required by larger living things. If a solid medium is needed, agar obtained from seaweed usually is added. Such a nutrient solution is called a culture medium. To keep out unwanted organisms, containers are covered with metal caps or are plugged with cotton. Then, before use, all nutrient materials are sterilized in an autoclave, which uses compressed steam in a manner similar to a pressure cooker. As the pressure within the autoclave increases, the temperature also rises until 121 degrees centigrade or 250 degrees Fahrenheit is reached and maintained for the necessary time. At the end of the heating period, the containers and their contents are now sterile, free from all living organisms. With these nutrients, study of bacteria can now be made under controlled conditions. For example, to grow the bacteria present in soil, a small sample of soil is mixed with sterile water, and then some of the mixture is transferred into a sterile petri dish, a special plate used for cultivating bacteria. The lip of a tube containing growth material is heated in a flame. Then the contents are added carefully to the diluted soil sample and mixed gently. After the nutrient medium has cooled and hardened, the dish is inverted and placed in an incubator which maintains a constant temperature to encourage growth of bacteria. During incubation, each bacterial cell in the soil sample grows and divides to form 2 new cells, as shown by time-lapse photography through the microscope. The division is repeated approximately each half hour. This method of reproduction is known as fission. Thus, great numbers of cells are created in a short time. After 1 or 2 days of incubation, this tremendous mass of bacterial cells becomes visible to the unaided eye. These visible masses are known as colonies. Each colony can arise from a single cell. The development of colonies also can be seen when fingers normally carrying bacteria are rubbed across the surface of a nutrient material. Time-lapse photography reveals the development of colonies. To examine the bacteria from a colony, a drop of water is placed on a glass slide. A wire transfer needle is sterilized in the flame of a burner to destroy bacteria which may be present. After the needle has cooled, a portion of a colony is picked up and transferred to the drop of water. The needle should be sterilized in the flame after as well as before each use. A cover glass is then placed over the preparation. With the high power objective, living bacteria from the selected colony become visible. However, to see them more clearly, bacteria should be stained for examination at still greater magnification. As before, a portion of the colony is transferred to a drop of water on a slide. This is dried in the air and then passed briefly through the flame to fix the preparation to the slide. To this fixed preparation, called a smear, a solution of dye is added to stain the cells. After about 1 minute, the excess dye is removed with water. The slide is then dried and placed on the stage of the microscope. A drop of special oil is placed on the stain smear. The lens, which permits magnification approximately 1,000 times, is lowered carefully into the oil. Upon focusing, the stained bacteria are easily seen. These are bacilli, the rod-shaped forms. Samples from other colonies show the presence of cocci, which are spherical in shape. Those with spiral shapes, the spirilla, are less frequently found. In certain studies, special stains may be used to reveal important structures. For example, the spore produced by some bacteria permits survival during unfavorable conditions. Another staining procedure reveals flagella, long whip-like structures which enable bacteria to move in a liquid. In addition to microscopic examination, the characteristics of colonies are used for identification. Some bacteria produce colonies of specific colors. Other colonies have unusual surface features. A variety of different colonies will be found on nutrient materials exposed to the air for a few minutes. Frequently on such a plate, colonies are found growing together. When a smear from a mixed colony is prepared and stained in a special way, different bacterial forms are observed. These cells represent two different species of bacteria. It is possible to separate these forms and to grow each one individually. To do this, a wire loop is touched to a portion of the mixed colony and streaked lightly across the surface of a sterile nutrient medium. After the loop is flamed, streaking is continued to distribute the cells. Following incubation, two types of colonies are observed separated on the last streaks. Specially stained smears reveal that each colony consists of a single type of bacterium. Each bacterium is now isolated and can be grown separately as a pure culture. In addition to cell and colony features, the metabolism of bacteria is also important in identification. For example, pure cultures of various bacteria can be transferred or inoculated into nutrient solutions containing a sugar and an acid-base color indicator. After incubation, the breakdown of the sugar by various bacteria is indicated by color changes as compared to the control tube, which was not inoculated. Some bacteria also produce gas, which collects in the small inverted tube. Another type of activity can be demonstrated when nutrient agar containing starch is inoculated with test bacteria. Some bacteria digest starch. After growth, this can be detected by the addition of iodine. The darkening color shows the presence of starch. Around the bacterial growth, the lack of color change indicates that the starch has been digested. With an understanding of the requirements for growth and metabolism of bacteria, it is possible to devise methods for their control. One common method of killing some bacteria is with relatively low heat. A series of inoculated tubes is heated at 60 degrees centigrade in a water bath. After various time intervals, individual tubes are removed and cooled in ice. The number of living bacteria in each tube, as determined by colony count, indicates that fewer cells survive with longer heating. Ultraviolet radiations from the sun or an artificial source affect bacteria. Test organisms are spread over the surface of growth materials, the dish partially covered, and then exposed to ultraviolet radiation. After incubation, growth appears only where the bacteria were not exposed to the ultraviolet light. Chemical antiseptics also effectively control the growth of many bacteria. A filter paper disc is soaked in a common antiseptic and placed on growth material that has been inoculated with a large number of bacteria. After incubation, the clear area around the disc indicates killing of the bacteria which came in contact with the antiseptic. Even though bacteria are extremely small in size, we have seen that methods have been developed for studying their characteristics and activities. Using these and similar techniques, man has learned not only how to control bacteria, but also how to utilize their desirable actions in his own service.
Oh yeah, I got so much laboratory footage. It is kind of outrageous. So many hands with test tubes and pipettes and Bunsen burners and all sorts of glass piping. It's wonderful. And did he say Azure as opposed to agar? Regarding the medium that you use to create a culture. That's what I thought he said, but I maybe I misheard it. And maybe that's really the way you pronounce it. I back in the day, when I guess I was taking biology in high school, I thought it was agar, but there you go. Anyways, let's see if we can guess what this next film is about. It has a very interesting title, Child's Play. I guarantee you that it is not about a possessed toy. But I don't know. Like, I'm not quite sure. It says McGraw-Hill, Child's Play. And this is why I enjoy doing this, showing films, is that I'm not going to look it up and see. We're just going to experience it together. It's going to be like a premiere in the 21st century of this film. Child's Play. Let's see what it's about. Is it made for children? Is it made for adults? Is it made for teachers? Is it just an interesting piece of information? Visually interesting? Let's see. I don't know. Very generic title that could go many different ways. Enjoy.
As we observe children, we see and remember their play as an old familiar friend. But could it be that most of us observe play without really seeing it? Could play, like some of our other old familiar friends, be taken for granted? With children in play, is there more than meets the eye?
This is a nice hat. Carrie, that is very weird. Can you pull up that? That's my teddy bear. Ooh.
In major, often subtle ways, the experience of play develops the child mentally, physically, emotionally, and socially.
Play is any activity that is freely chosen and pursued for the sake of sheer enjoyment. Play doesn't have to be forced on the child. He wants to play. He has a natural urge to play. And why? Because it gives him satisfactions. The satisfactions, for example, of expending his boundless energy, of constructing fantasies, of establishing contacts with other children and adults as well. But as a psychologist, play means more to me than just enjoyment. And it's not just killing time or filling time or keeping the child out of mischief either. It's an instrument for growth, a prime, indispensable instrument for the development of the child's personality. Play is not just recreation, it's creation, the creation of a sound, well-balanced individual.
As individuals develop from infancy through the preschool stage, as their personalities become increasingly broad and complex, the nature and scope of play expands correspondingly.
In infancy, play really is solitary kind of play. That is, the baby is really concerned with himself. It's an egotistical, egocentric kind of play. He's not concerned with other people around him because he hasn't had enough experience and certainly is not mature enough. So that you'll see a lot of solitary play in young infants and toddlers. They'll play by themselves or they will relate to things rather than to specific kinds of materials or to people. The second kind of play is a parallel play, and you'll often see this in child care centers where there are toddlers. It doesn't matter to them who they play with or who they play alongside of. they are more interested in play for the sake of play. And if they happen to bump up against somebody, they might have some problems. They don't care who they take something from or who gives them something. They're more interested, again, in just sort of being close to other people.
4-year-olds play more socially, but their activity is still informal and independent. Other children become part of play, but drop in or out at will. This type of interaction is called associative play. As they get older, though, children begin to play in groups. They become avid socializers, and it's easier for them to get into the cooperative spirit. They begin to deal with and to understand their peers. Group play is the basis for ongoing social development.
If a child is to learn social skills through his play, then one of the ideal ways is to let him bump up, in a sense, against a lot of other children and find out what it's like to get into a fight or to get into a scrape. And then have an adult say to him, if you hit somebody, he's not going to like you, or he's going to hit you back. And you may sound like a broken record, but this is giving a child lots of feedback so that he can understand exactly what he's doing and what the results of his behavior are. This is part of social play. A child who insists on grabbing from other children will find out what the results are if he doesn't want to share. These are things, again, that he learns through experience.
But play is more than an opportunity for children to learn social skills, more than an introduction to cooperation and group activity. Dr. Goldenson.
Play is the child's major means of exploring his world, the world of sounds and sights and people. And second, it's a way of exploring himself, his own abilities, his own dexterity, for example, his ability to coordinate, to know himself and to form his own self-image.
In play, the child begins to explore, to solve problems, to imitate the world as it is, and to imagine how it might be. Exploratory play, for example, starts early. Children begin exploring the world in the first 2 or 3 months of life. As muscles are discovered and developed, children begin to explore and to understand the workings of the world. They become familiar with their surroundings, and they learn how to manipulate their environment. Problem-solving play offers children the stimulation of challenge after challenge. In facing new problems, the child encounters both the experience of coping with frustration and the satisfaction that comes with accomplishment. Equally important are the dimensions of imitation and drama in the play of a developing child. Imitation permits children to become something other than children, and dramatic play offers the child limitless possibilities to prepare for the future. It's make-believe.
As I see it, dramatic play is a laboratory in which a child can rehearse real-life situations. He can express himself in these situations, and he can also alter his attitudes toward people and things through these situations. Now, between 2 and 3, generally speaking, the child begins to imitate the sounds and movements of animals, trains, planes, and then he pretends to be a grown-up who keeps house, tends the baby, telephones, drives a car. These are the first experiences with dramatic play. And then from 3 to 6 is the peak period for let's pretend and for make-believe.
Children don't have many opportunities to work out some of their very strong feelings. They're usually relating to people who are pretty powerful. Mommy and daddy and teacher is always larger than they are. The adults are powerful in the sense they control what the child does, and he or she is very much dependent on these powerful people. And in relating to these people, the young child has to deal with many kinds of confused feelings. And so it is important to give the child an opportunity through play to retreat into fantasy and to sort of play out some of these feelings in a more acceptable kind of a role.
It's generally agreed among psychologists that dimensions and forms of play go hand in hand. Solitary play and associative play, imitative play and fantasy play. They are linked together and integrated in the bodies, minds, and emotions of developing children, offering them ways to resolve conflicts, opportunities to adapt, experiences in dealing with the present, and preparing for the future. Though it might seem random and meaningless to adult eyes, play is often the child's work. But if play is a child's work, what are they working toward?
Preschool play has a major effect on readiness for school tasks. First, it increases the child's vocabulary. He gets an interest in numbers. He gets an interest in colors because the nursery school, the home too, is colorful, and he learns the names of colors very, very early.
Yummy. Yeah. Allison, sample the little. Sugar.
And then he also learns to follow instructions, very important in school life.
You know what you smell, Noel? Smell what frosting looks like?
And more important than anything are the attitudes that he learns, which he can carry over into school. For example, concentration. There's nothing more concentrated than a child who's playing and playing hard. He's paying attention to what he is doing. That carries over, hopefully. And a problem-solving attitude by solving, let's say, puzzles of various kinds. That, too, can carry over. And then there's curiosity. Curiosity about the world at large and the things and the people in the world can be awakened and must be awakened in the preschool years.
What's that room right there, Chrissy? It is. What are they doing there? Look at this seat on that thing. What some of the other rooms do.
Children play to learn. Conversely, children learn to play. Though the urge to play seems to come naturally to all children, how they play is often shaped by others.
The child has to learn how to play well, to play in ways that will benefit and enrich his personality. He has to learn how to use different materials. And he can only learn that if an adult, a parent, or a teacher shows him how to use these materials. And maybe the best way is to sit down on the floor with a small child and play with him and enjoy that play. Now, many parents have all the toys in the world and leave the child alone, and they come home and find that he's sitting in a corner doing nothing. Why? Because they were not involved in his play. And many homes, I find, are play impoverished, not because they can't afford the expensive toys we talked about, because the common playthings are even better in many cases, but because there's a tense, driving atmosphere in the home, or because the parents are too distracted to give the child the attention he needs in his play. They may be distracted by their busyness or by their own play itself.
Very often, I think adults will spend a lot of time and money to select a toy for a child, an elaborate kind of truck, for example, that may cost about $30 or $40, and find out, much to their disappointment, the child really enjoys playing with the box and the packings more. This is something that I would not discourage. I think that the box and the packings really offer much more for the child by way of enticing him to use his imagination.
I make a distinction between toys and playthings. I mean toys that you buy in the store. Now compare, we'll say, a boat like this, very handsome, it floats, with a boat that might be made out of pieces of wood, scrap pieces of wood. He can make his own boats, and he can project his fantasies better into those boats that he makes.
Involved, creative, just plain fun. Play opens new realms to the growing child, allowing the child to explore the world around her and the many worlds within.
Last but not least, I think we overlook sometimes just the joy and the fun of playing. There's nothing more exciting and rewarding than to watch children playing wholeheartedly. A child has an opportunity through play to create something that's strictly his and to do something that's completely original. He's been able to use materials and make an impact on his environment that didn't exist before, and that's a very powerful kind of experience.
So I'm a big proponent of play. I think that it's valuable for... Where am I? I think it's valuable for kids, and I also think it's valuable for adults to play. Yeah. Anyways, I live my life. I do certain things work-related and adult-related, but I also try to play. I try to come up with activities that are playful and fun. It's great. It's why you live, to play. That's what I'm saying. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Kevin, for donating via the Super Thanks button on YouTube. That's a great way to support us. You can also go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks, patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are other ways to support us. And like I have been saying this week, there's going to be a big ask for some money for shelving and rehousing these films. We're doing some renovation work. And so, actually, I'm going to say right now, next week, my staff has said that I'm not allowed to do my live shows, that I'm supposed to help schlep 15,000 films out of the archive. So I've said I'll do it. I mean, this is part of what I consider play for me, is hanging out with you guys and showing films and, you know, all that. But my staff, I can't ask them to do something that I'm not willing to do. So next week is going to be pre-recorded shows, which will be fun in their own right, but rest assured I will be schlepping some films into vans and then onto shelves off-site. So thank you again for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow live, and we will see you soon. Everybody take care.